from New Hampshire, from the very core of New Hampshire. Let me put this thing for the wind on the microphone, if I can find it. So I know that I started to post the series related to my road trip in New England, but I haven't managed to post the place where I am staying right now, and I've been staying here the entire week. Also, let me know if you are able to hear me. Here the internet connection is very unstable. I'm not in New York City this time, so excuse me for that. Hello Gina, hello your man, hello. Okay, you can hear me, yes. So this is my very first live stream outside of New York City, which is pretty crazy if I think about that. And I'm super excited because this is an amazing place. I love it. Loud and clear. You can hear me. Hello Belarus, hello B-Ben, hello Owen. All right, technical stuff all fine for now. Let's see if it lasts. So I was saying that I am in New Hampshire, as you have seen from the title. Specifically, I don't know how many of you know New Hampshire, but this is Mount Whiteface, and we are very close to the White Mountain National Park, which is really in the core, in the middle of the state of New Hampshire. These days we are watching this amazing natural show that is the fall foliage of this area, and oh my god, it is absolutely stunning. I've been enjoying every second of it. As you can see, beautiful sunset. Here it's 5 p.m. in the east coast of the United States, and it's gonna be a bit different than my usual live stream, or better, very different, because first of all, I'm not gonna be alone. This place where I'm staying, which we are going inside that house in a moment, that house is the center of this big piece of land that is called Sacred Nectar Sanctuary, and despite the name, it's not a religious place at all. It's rather a place for healing, and a place for building a sustainable future and inspiring people, and building a community where people are happier and more in harmony with nature, and are interested in basically saving the human race on this planet. Something like that. Big ideals and big thoughts are cultivated and shared in this place, and I've been so lucky in this entire week to be able to live here at close contact with these people who are developing this project, which is at its you are gonna see slowly. I ask you to be patient because I know you might be confused right now, but everything is gonna be more clear also during the next week, when I'm gonna release more videos about my trip, about this place as well. Okay, so can you hear me? I hope today is very windy. I hope it's not too windy, but I'm just gonna start this live stream outside because I really wanted to show you the beautiful environment we are in here, and then we are gonna go join all the other people in the house and start a conversation. The topic of the conversation today is gonna be localism, so the importance of building local relationships and building a local economy nowadays for our world, for our planet. Okay, let me check out who has joined this live stream so far. Hello Robert, Alan, Take 7, Mike Ryder, Terry, Camille, Genuit, Ajit. Hello everyone, so nice to see you. How cold is here? Today it's pretty cold, and I was showing you the Mount Whiteface here that we can see from the house and from this entire property. This morning the tip of the mountain was completely white, so it's been the very first snow of the year on these mountains, which are the White Mountains if you join just in this moment. I'm glad you can hear me perfectly, because you're never sure when you go live what's gonna happen. Yeah, so the phone reception is very problematic here, especially because I have T-Mobile, which is the worst. They have a good Wi-Fi inside, and in like 15 minutes I'm gonna go join them inside and use the Wi-Fi. And before doing that, I actually want to show you a little bit around. So on my left side, you can see the garden of this community. It's a beautiful big garden that especially two people of my age have been building in this past 1.5 years, I think. They started 1.5 years ago, and they are two farmers. They've been helped by other people who live here, or they come like me just to stay here for a while and then go away. And this is a garden that provides at least some of the vegetables for the entire little community that is living here, and it's absolutely beautiful. I want to flip the camera and show you a little bit before the sun goes down. I am so excited for this because I don't know how well you know me so far, but I grew up having a family garden, and my family still has back in Italy, and I think it's just such a natural thing to have a garden where you grow the food that you eat. See, this is all salad. By the way, these two guys, which are called, by the way, Zach and Tristan, they are a couple. They have been starting to sell once per week at the farmers market some of these veggies, and they just came back half an hour ago. They just called me because they are ready inside to start the discussion, so in 2 minutes I'm gonna go. They just came back from farmers market day. Look at this cabbage, it's wonderful. This is the broccoli. I made an amazing pasta with broccoli yesterday with this broccoli here. Here it's I think it's green beets. I had these for lunch today. I just boiled them and put some salt and olive oil. Look at this wonderful baby spinach. I come out to take a walk. I come here, get some spinach leaves or a carrot, and just eat it straight from the plant. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. I love it. This is celery, leek. Let me this type of cabbage. We made soup 3 days ago with this, and it's absolutely incredible. It's so tender and sweet, and this is something that is very common here in the United States. We don't have it in Italy. You guess what it is? When I arrived here the first day, which was exactly 1 week ago, by the way, I arrived on Saturday night. This looked to me like little palm trees, like bonsai palm trees. I didn't know what they were. Yeah, Jason guessed. And Jason is from the city, so double points for you. Congratulations, it's kale. And we made soup with that too. This is just simple salad. This is my shade. This is the pile of animal poop to fertilize the land. Look at the colors. Oh my God. I'm telling you, this place is something incredible. And look at this. Let's see if you recognize this. I guess so. This is also not very common in Italy. So it was actually my first time seeing the plant of this veggie. This one has no leaf, so it's more clear what it is. But you can see this one is still developing. Brussels sprouts! Tony da Costa guessed right. Okay, sorry, it's windy, so I have hair all over me. So this is the front of the house where I'm gonna go inside now. I just wanted to start this live stream outside so you have a little bit of context where we are. Also, I'm surprised to see that the internet connection is stable enough to allow this live stream. So maybe in the next days I can do another one and be outside if I get another sunny day like this one. Because as you can see, this is such a stunning environment. And if I don't come out for live streams, I'm all day editing videos in the kitchen indoors. So this is a good excuse as well. Let's see what you say. So many of you guess Brussels sprouts. I guess they are more common out of Italy. Andres asks, hello Auke, you're here. Andres asks, you want to own a farm in the near future? I don't want to own much. And especially I don't want to plan my future that much, but I would love to live in a place like this. So I don't know if I would like to have the huge burden of owning a place like this and having to deal with all the taxes and all these things that I really have no knowledge about. But I would certainly, you know, in the future when I'm gonna stop traveling, when I want to settle again, I want to live in a place like this for sure. And definitely a place where there is a big garden with veggies that I can, you know, this week I would literally, you know, at this time of the day before the sun sets, I would come out here maybe with other workawayers, because here I am a workawayer. So these people open up their space for other travelers or digital nomads, or simply people who want to come here for 1 week, 2 weeks, 2 months, who knows, and just do an experience of helping out for a few hours a day, and for the rest of the day they can do their own thing, which is what I've been doing here. In my case, I haven't been doing so much manual work, unfortunately, because I love manual work, but I'm helping them out with shooting some videos for this place. So that's what I've been doing mainly. And it's been so amazing coming here with other workawayers. We were 5 until yesterday, and today we are only 3. Then tonight another is gonna come, we're gonna be 4, and we have our own outdoor kitchen. And you know, at sunset we come here and we gather a mix of vegetables that afterwards we cook for dinner, and we eat them fresh. You know, it's like the real kilometer zero. So let me tell you one last thing. You were asking me how long I'm gonna stay here in this place. I don't really know, because it's been 1 week now, and I think tomorrow, because it's gonna be the last sunny day until for a while, I'm gonna hit the road again, take my car and drive to Vermont and go around seeing Vermont, because I haven't seen Vermont yet, and everyone keeps telling me, oh, you need to see the foliage there because it's the best. But yeah, let's see. Probably I'm gonna shoot a Vermont vlog tomorrow for 1 day or 2, and then maybe I'm gonna come back here for another few days, and then who knows. I'm really not planning. As you know, I don't want to plan my trips. I just go with full independent, which is amazing. It's one of the perks of having a car. So that's to answer that question. Now, what's gonna happen? I'm gonna go in because they are waiting for me to start a discussion. So let me tell you this. From the very first night I arrived here, I've experienced so many moments of discussion about very deep and concrete topics. So there has been many moments of just chilling out and making jokes, don't get me wrong, but there are also some other moments where we literally find ourselves sitting down all in the same room and someone starts talking about topics related to sustainability usually, and how we envision a better future for us, better future than the one that we are having right now. And I always thought from the very first night, oh my God, I would love to film this. Why am I not filming this super interesting conversation? And so a couple of days ago, the manager told me, hey, if you wanted to film, maybe we can arrange, one discussion at the precise time so you can announce it first. Robert, no, the conversation are not going to be political. These people almost never talk about politics, honestly. It's more about visions, ideas for the future, and doing concrete things, because as you can see, they already started doing something very concretely in this sense. So the conversation, don't worry, is not going to be political. Since I came here exactly 1 week ago, we haven't even talked about COVID. Also, you're gonna see that we are not gonna wear masks indoors because it's a new thing. I wore a mask all the first days that I was here, and since a couple of days I stopped because I was seeing that, everybody is fine with it and we are all very healthy. I know that the quarantine period usually is 14 days, but obviously the first days are the ones that is more there is more probability that you get the virus, and we've passed those first 5 days. We are all very healthy, have no problems, so I decided to stop using a mask. So this is to clarify it. Please don't make comments about masks during the discussion, because this is all I'm going to say about it. What else? So now we're gonna go there, and honestly, as always, this is gonna be an experiment. I'm not gonna be able to interact with you guys like I do normally, also because I want to participate in the conversation and I want you also to hear me talking with these people. So I cannot be in front of the camera reading the chat and on the other side at the same time. So I'm just gonna tell you now, I'm not gonna read your comments. A couple of times I'm gonna move from the conversation and come to read the live chat. If I see very long and seemingly and synthetic in-depth questions, or comments, I am gonna address them. So if you send me just 2 lines, I'm not gonna read them. I'm just gonna give the priority to longer comments, and only if I see in the first 2 lines that they are very concise and synthetic. Okay? I hope to read some of your comments, of course, but please be patient because we are like 10 people in there, so it's gonna be a bit complicated to manage everything. Also, from here to the house where I have the Wi-Fi, probably the reception is gonna fall, because there is like an empty spot of reception there. So be patient for 2 minutes that I arrive to the Wi-Fi, all right? Everything okay? A last look at this wonderful sunset. I appreciate you all being here, and I'll see you inside. Not sure if you can see anything, but I try, because this is, oh my God, look at this. Hello, everyone. Okay, just able to stay because there is a live chat. They can interact, and usually I'm, holding the camera all the time. But I told them that I'm not gonna be able to do that because I want to participate in the conversation and not stay here all the time.
Oh, awesome.
So maybe 1 or 2 times I'm gonna come back, and if I see someone who made a very in-depth but concise question, I can bring it up to the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
I like that idea.
Nice.
Can you please tell me if the connection is back? Because I hooked up to the Wi-Fi right now, so I need a sign. That's a nice house. Okay, I guess so. Just gonna set up the other microphone 1 second. Zach and Tristan. So these are Zach and Tristan.
Hello.
And I showed your garden to everyone. And I told them that you just came back from the farmer's market.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
how did it go?
Oh, it was great.
Yeah, it went really well today.
Yeah, a lot of people came, surprisingly. There's still a lot of people coming to see the fall foliage up here and stopping by the farmer's market and having fun. Lots of chit-chatting with the locals.
So a lot of tourists as well.
Yeah.
But a lot of really good, core local people that show up every week, too.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you were saying that there was a good turnout in the veggies that were sold today too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell them what all you sold.
Okay. Well, right now, the stuff that is available, locally, what's in season is mostly greens and root vegetables. So we sold, a lot of different types of spinach and lettuce and Swiss chard and kale, and then, turnips and radishes and carrots, root veg.
Yes.
For the healthy in-season veggies.
Yeah, I ate some of your spinach during the live stream too.
It's so good right now. It gets really,
Yeah.
really tasty when it starts frosting. So good.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah.
My God,
Yeah.
it's the best spinach I've ever had, I think.
It tastes the best when it grows back after winter.
Uh-huh.
It's just had all this time to build up sugars. Oh, so good. It tastes like candy. It's like candy spinach. And then
Yeah, exactly.
if you can find a farmer who's got deep winter greenhouse carrots, those things are better than any piece of candy you can find. They're just so good.
I want some now.
Sorry.
Have lettuce for their pizza.
Yeah. So did you tell everybody what we were talking about?
Yes, I introduced the topic, which is localism, and they obviously know that we talk a lot about sustainability here and envisioning a possible future that is more, in harmony with nature and more sustainable for our living here. Not for our planet, but as we were talking about with Colin, but for us on this planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
And
We'll be back in a second.
also Catherine, which is the, how can we call you? What's your
What was it
role?
on the video that I was called? Earth Care.
Earth care specialist.
She, together with Nick, who is outside right now, which is her son, are the owners of all this place and the visionaries of this entire project, this community. She today sent us an article from which we're gonna take some inspirations about talking about local economies and localism in general.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit before you came in
Mm-hmm.
about what were the things that we noticed in the article that,
Yeah.
Can we bring up the article name, the title? We might as well
Yes.
give credit where
I
credit
have a
is
few
due.
notes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Stormy, you wanna read the title?
Yeah, so it was from the New York Times, I think, right? And it's called "What If Local and Diverse is Better Than Networked and Global?" So in the article, it talked a lot about why it's important to come back to our local communities and what we're eating, what we're consuming, and all of that. And that's kind of what we try to do every day.
And what we noticed during these COVID and all of the difficulty getting certain products, you'd go to the store and there'd be parts of the shelves that were empty. So what's happening in New England is people are getting a little bit worried about how they're going to survive if we have other issues like this that worsen, because globalism, the global economy that we have now, most of our products come from fairly far away, and the trucks weren't able to come. The factories were shut down for a certain amount of time, so if you need a part for a broken appliance or a car, it's been taking longer to get those parts. So we've seen an influx of people from the city here to our small town. Our population is 1,300. So people are buying houses because they want to get out of the city, and we're just thinking a little more deeply about what we've already started to do here, which is try to live with a local economy and work with our neighbors and build relationships in our community, convincing town government to allow us to build houses a little bit differently than we may have in the past and earn money in different local ways. The reason Nick wasn't here was we have 7 campsites on the property, and that was a camper just checking into their site for the night, so that's another way that we're earning some money to sustain our community. But then we want to grow our own food, and there's a lot of different things that each of us is doing to contribute to localism and getting away from a global economy.
I think also the other thing about the campsites is it allows people to come in and see what sort of, is possible, and how to live closer to nature and to the earth and less dependent on, just, you don't have to go to, basically, you don't have to take a plane to go somewhere to have like a really nice just time. It's like just right in your own backyard. Just go outside in your backyard and sit for 5 minutes and listen to the wind and the trees.
Right, and I think like part of our mission statement is to create a sustainable living example. So having the campsites and then having this sustainable living example here that we're creating, like people get to come and see that and be like, wow, it is possible, I can do it, like anyone can do it, and that's gonna help the vision and the mission spread.
To be honest, even for me, and I've always been very environmentally conscious my entire life, and I come from the countryside, but still I've always felt very, hopeless is not the right term because I've always had a lot of hope, but I didn't have the tools, like the concrete tools to do something about it. Like I've always been very confused about what I should do concretely, practically. And I mean, my YouTube channel is an example of that, because the main theme that I care about in this world is the environment. And I have very little videos on my channel that talk about it directly. So that's an example. But when I came here, it's very clear and very easy to understand what you can do concretely to, change this mentality that we are in, that is just destroying the environment that we have been living for, hundreds of thousands of years. So kudos to that. I mean, it's really, it looks so simple once I came here. It just looked very simple. Like, by the way, on my channel, I haven't released any videos about this place yet, so nobody who is listening to us from home knows about this, how it all happened. But basically, Catherine and Nick, who are mother and son, had this big property in New Hampshire, and Nick's father was originally thinking to sell parts of it as house lots, right? And Nick kind of took in his hands the situation and challenged his father to be able to pay the taxes for the land without having to sell it. And that's how he built this campsite and in order to be able to pay these taxes. And then from there, all the vision started of an actual sustainable community that lives here and develops in this place. So this is very briefly something about this place.
Also, I think one thing about building communities now more than ever with climate change and having to be more interdependent with each other, because we can't depend on somebody way out there helping us survive. We are the climate challenge is bigger than any pandemic, and things will get worse, and there will be extreme weather coming. I mean, we're not experiencing a lot of change in New Hampshire yet, but it will be coming, and we need to depend on each other. So here it's a symbiotic relationship with all of us, because everybody here has certain talents, and by sharing that, Nick and I alone would not be able to do what we're doing. It takes a lot of work to make those big gardens that you've seen out front, and to feed yourself. And so, and also for Zach and Tristan to be able to start a farm, it's very expensive. Taxes are expensive, land is expensive. So for them to be able to just go out, find a piece of land, get everything they need, wouldn't be possible either. So we're helping each other. And so our community here, it's very important to have people coming and being together, planning together, and finding ways to be more and more self-sufficient, and then spreading that just in our small neighborhood and in our small town, because we're going to need, the entire town is going to have to work together to be able to be successful during what's going to be more difficult times to come.
I think a big part of this place is that it allows people the opportunity to find their gifts, because most people are don't like the jobs that they're working for somebody else. And typically those systems that the jobs include are like degrading nature and the earth. And when people come here, they find little talents that they like to do that help out the community. So like my friend Sonny picked up sewing just recently, and now she's like making our curtains, and she's like making shirts for people and everything. And it's hard to take like a leap of faith when you're working for somebody else to start doing those kinds of things. And also sometimes you don't even know that you have those gifts until you're given the opportunity. So that's kind of our point here, is to give people a lot of room to not have to worry about paying rent and being a part of the hustle and bustle.
Definitely. I think this like is a huge opportunity for a lot of people, and it's been, you know, the like individualistic society has been so ingrained for so many people for so long. It's just like you grow up like you're all you have, like you're supporting yourself, it's just you, and then you get into that mold and that's what you're taught, and you know, grow up into that, and then having a place like this, like even for me, made me realize that, you know, like I'm not by myself. There's like, you're never gonna truly succeed or live up to your best potential without like community. It's so important.
Absolutely.
And there is something that glue everything together, and I think it's their kindness and passion for teaching people. Like me, as an outsider here that just came a few days ago, I've been feeling at home, and there is so many things that I'm just curious about it, and I can just go in different directions throughout the day. And I think in order to have this happen, they must have some sort of like compassion and big heart from you guys. So I think that's something that I guess in other places that people are trying to have this kind of, you know, things running. I think that's at heart is that it's compassion for another human being, and it's genuine kindness. You know, that's so thank you for that.
We do a lot of inner spiritual work, because we're not in that rat race that Tristan talked about, where we're so busy just trying to keep up with, get our paychecks and pay our bills, that you don't have that time to decompress and really spend time on your spiritual life or your inner growth. So it's a lot easier to practice compassion when you have that time to, because it is a practice. You don't just learn it overnight and then it just is there forever.
Right.
You have to spend some time being compassionate and
Right.
trying to understand other people. And so living in community takes a little bit of extra effort, but it's so worth the effort, because, you know, without a little effort, you can't become compassionate unless you're really thinking about how another person or group of people are feeling.
Also adding to that, we're fortunate here to have the time to be compassionate and empathetic to other people, whereas if you're working, you know, 40 hours a week and, you know, always sitting in traffic, and basically when your whole day gets taken up, you're using a little time left that you have in your day for, you know, yourself. And if you have more time, you're able to give more of your time to other people.
Yeah, I agree.
You have a, like, actually Mary Jane was saying, you were saying this the other day, and I thought it was so interesting, like the phrase, like, time is money is just like so wrong. And I love that you brought up that point, because I think that that's really, really important for a lot of people to hear that, because a lot of people do feel that, and I think like the community aspect and, you know, interacting with people and building connections is like, you can't put a monetary value on that.
Yeah, and in building connections, like we were talking about a little bit this morning, with knowing your local mechanic, for instance, and the local guy who cuts lumber, as opposed to going to a big store. I think there's a lot to be said on the value of being able to have that human connection with somebody who's right down the road, who's putting their heart into their work and into the wood they're creating and into the vehicles they're fixing, versus big corporations where you don't really see where it comes from. And that's another reason why it's so
Right.
important to.
Well, it's basically taking this environment that we've created for ourselves in this community and growing it to be a part of the larger community, which is people in your local area, and developing relationships and with them, and, you know, bartering with them, or, you know, using each other's gifts to help each other out, or you know, if they're having trouble or something, you can be compassionate and empathetic towards them, and, you know, if you're having trouble, they can do the same for you.
So I guess this is the human aspect of localism, or actually today it was my first time hearing this concept of localism, so I don't know 100% what it means exactly, in which connotation it has. But if we talk about local economy in general, I guess this is the more, there are kind of two aspects. One is more technical and linked to the environmental aspect, I think, and the other one is more personal and kind of spiritual and linked to the humanitarian aspect. So we have talked about now the humanitarian aspect of it, but then there is the whole environmental aspect of promoting local markets versus global markets, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The amount of transportation that goes on for commerce in this country and just shipping goods all around the world is it's kind of frightening, because there's a lot of travel that goes into whatever comes in whatever package you get or whatever gets to your table. It has gone through a pretty long journey to get there.
Wasn't it that refrigeration is the worst pollution?
For climate change, the biggest effect on climate change is refrigeration,
Really?
which
Refrigerator trucks.
Which comes from transporting refrigerated things, yeah.
it's the refrigerant that's released into the atmosphere. And that comes from things coming over across the sea from China in refrigerated containers and refrigerated trucks. And so what we're working towards, and the things we do here, it's always a work in progress, because it takes many steps and learning to get to where we want to be, but eating locally and eating in season will help us not have to get our food from further away. So in the end of the summer, when the potatoes are ready and when the vegetables are ready, we can get our protein and our starch, our things from our own garden, so that we don't have to go to the store and buy anything but maybe a few. We can't get salt, so if you want salt, we'd have to buy things like that. But trying to eat according to what we grow, and working towards preserving, which is a lot of work, we found out. So we don't have everything for the whole year for everybody, but that is our goal, is to be able to provide our food year round, the majority of it year round. So that's part of localism too. And buying from neighbors. If we don't have squash, then we would buy hopefully from our neighbor and not go to the store.
Yeah, like for us, not to toot our own horn or anything, but I think the farmers market is a really good example of like both sides of localism, right? So you're going to the market, you're building the connections with the other people that do things in the community. Like, we're trading vegetables for our bread, and the bread lady lives like 10 minutes down the road, and we know her and we have a relationship with her. So it's like we're building that community aspect of the localism of like, knowing people, trading, and then the also more like economical, like it didn't have to travel very far, and like Zach and I will go to the market for the community, so it's one car, so much less fuel to get, we get our yogurt, our bread, our kombucha, vegetables, microgreens. I have so much stuff from so many local people, and I think that's like one small step that a lot of people can take to make a big difference. It's like building those relationships and cutting down on like how far your food travels and supporting the local people in your community.
I'm wondering, like, you guys as farmers, that you have hands-on to the vegetables and growing the vegetables. What also means for you to be able to do something with your hands, like rather than just being in a computer, for example, or just growing something that you can eat later? What's like the process of seeing that process of growing?
I hear what you're saying about the hands thing, and I think it's really more about a personal aspect of like somebody doing something that they want to do for themselves, that is their gift to the world. And so I grew up as like a computer nerd, and like I remember like the first time like I made a little computer program for like my friend or something, or a website for my friend, and I felt so good, and it's like almost the same satisfaction that I get from growing something in the ground. I think it's really about people finding their passion, and a lot of people are disconnected from what their passion actually is. That when people like go, oh, dirt, like there's this like primal instinct that like our brain just connects to, but I don't think it's necessarily reserved for working with your hands in the soil. I think it's just something that we all like have this primal connection where we want to just be out there and contribute to the community.
So you could say the same thing, but we have musicians that live here, so you could say
Yeah.
the same thing about them. They're doing something that gives them pleasure, but they're also giving it to the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Plus, it's really cool to plant something and be like, hey, I agree with that. Look at it. It looks really good.
Yeah.
There's also the different types of economies. You were talking about the climate. The economy that we've been using and most of the world has been using is a linear economy.
Yeah.
And if you don't keep producing and marketing and selling, which has gotten completely out of control in the United States, then your economy fails. And everything falls apart. The whole economy falls apart. So instead of a linear economy, there are people that talk about a circular economy. There's a similar term called donut economy, which some countries are trying to institute. There's also the gift economy, which they were talking about sharing at the farmer's market. You know, we'll get bread, here's some vegetables, and
Traded bread for carrots today. That was pretty cool.
yeah, yeah. So we're trying to get away from the linear economy.
Hey, Emily.
Hey, come on in, Emily.
Hello.
Join us. We have an extra seat.
Wow.
Welcome back.
Very good timing. Thank you. Wow. I get the big chair.
You are live streaming too on my YouTube
Oh
channel.
my gosh.
Has anybody asked any
Grand
questions?
entrance.
So I'm getting a lot of people who are obviously not from this channel in the live chat, and I know Stephanie is connected. So Stephanie, please, if you can select a little bit, like delete the comments that are just nasty, and I give you full power to block people because the chat is a little bit out of control right now, and I don't like that. And I want to participate in this conversation, so I don't want to be there and blocking people from the live chat. So if my moderators can help me with that, otherwise I'm just gonna probably just block the chat completely because I don't like what's like the vibe that are going on there. Okay? Thank you.
Say it, Mary Jane. Say it.
We love you anyway.
Hope you're well. Hope you're well.
Let me
We
reframe.
do recognize that we are privileged. I mean, not everybody gets to live in such a beautiful place, and our lives are not full of, we don't have war in our town, we don't have starvation, we don't have police brutality here, so there's so much that we don't have to contend with. So it makes life a lot easier. So when we talk about all of these things we're doing, there would be circumstances where it would be much more difficult to do that, and we're grateful that we don't have that, and we wish no one else in the world had to deal with those kinds of things. But we can only move forward trying to share what we have here to the best of our ability and make the changes we can. I mean, we work together in community, but also people that live here have other things that they do to better the world on their own. We don't do everything together. We all have some of our own things, so.
Yeah, and going back to like the localism piece of like the environmental concept, I've heard a lot of people talk about when they're shopping and consuming, trying to consume within a 25-mile out radius or at least a 100-mile radius from where you're living. So if you can't get everything in the 25-mile radius, at least trying to get it in the 100-mile radius as opposed to across the world because of all the carbon emissions that go into the planes and the trucks and the refrigeration and all the other steps in between. And I think that's a lot of why doing things on a community level are important.
Definitely. I think one thing that we've been working towards doing as a community that I find to be beneficial is the things that we can't produce ourselves and can't get locally. We try and buy them like organically and in bulk through one of our friends who works at a national health food store. And I think that like doing that in a lot of ways, you know, can cut down sort of on the fossil fuel consumption, because you're not going to the store once a week to buy like the 5-pound bag of rice. Like you're buying it one time in bulk from like maybe a better source that you could get than you could get at your local grocery store. So I think that's definitely one thing that we're looking towards doing, because there's a lot of like little things you can do, like no matter what situation you're in, like what living situation, well, maybe not totally no matter what, but like just you know, trying to do little tiny things. Like everything you do counts, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like every step you make towards just doing the best you can do no matter what situation you're in is helping.
Yeah, and I think we all recognize the fact that we like to be able to get in our car and go to the grocery store and get those things that we can't produce locally. And so like I think just our awareness of like, oh hey, like I've got this car that was designed from a global system, like it's kind of awe-inspiring, but it's like we really need to try and like get what we can where we can as close as we can, but like not denying the fact that there is good from being so interconnected, but just like the linear economy that Kathy was talking about earlier, it's kind of really disconnected with just like the human, and it's really just measured in dollars per person per year, the gross domestic product of a country, and it's not really taking into account like gross domestic happiness. And like I think that's
GDH.
yeah and I think that's probably more important, and like building these connections through the local economy will really help to serve the global happiness of the country. Like you start small and like you do what you can where you can as close as you can, but it's like a lot of our flour, like it's really hard to produce that at scale, like economically sustainable, because there's that aspect. It's like, you know, if we can't pay the bills, we can't sustain our own life the way we want to. So we will have to make sacrifices, like, oh, like we have to get our flour, and like sometimes we go and get flour from like the local health food store where they're getting it from like people who grow it in like the North Country in Maine, which is more than 100 miles away. But it's like sometimes that flour is really expensive, and it's like $2.50 a pound, and it's like we can't buy that every week, every time. So it's like we will make those little concessions and like buy the King Arthur flour, and it's like that flour was probably produced in like the Midwest and like Kansas, and it's like I think it just goes back to awareness. But it's like the fact that we get it as close as we can. It's like that local little grocery store, like that guy's got your back. We saw that. Like when the store shelves were empty in the big grocery stores this spring and winter, the little stores that really tried to source from like as local as possible at a reasonable price, like they had the stuff.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I actually love that you brought up this topic, because I think in the world of environmentally conscious people, very often I see a lot of judgment towards people who are environmentally cautious, but they are not perfect.
No
So
one's perfect.
I hate this concept of being fundamentalist and being extreme. I think that in life we should always try to find the middle way. This is what, at least, I'm a philosophy major, and this is what the big ancient wise Aristotle told us 2,000 years ago. And we still have to learn to do that, to find the balance between the extremes. We cannot just exclude one side, privileging another side, and vice versa. We should always try to find that compromise, that middle way, that balance. And for example, I actually took some notes while I was reading the article today. And one note, the biggest one, is about the title of the article. So the title of this article, it was published on the New York Times during these days, was "What if local and diverse is better than networked and global?" Which is obviously a provoking title, as all the titles in big media have to be nowadays. But at the same time, it sends not the right message, in my opinion, because it communicates that local and diverse is better than networked and global, which, okay, it's fine in our situation, but I don't think we should now just devilize. Do you say in English devilize? Yeah.
Sure.
You cannot just devilize everything that is global now, because the globalization brought us so many positive aspects as well. The only fact that me, Carlos, and Emily and Kobe are here is because we have a thing called internet and a World Wide Web, for which we went on a website and we connected to Nick, who posted an ad, on this website. So this is just one of the so many examples. So it really drives me crazy when these environmentalist people are too extreme on that side and devilize everything that is global and that is modern, because modernity brings also something good, very many positive aspects. And yeah, this is just what I wanted to say. So
Yeah.
I like that you brought up the fact that we should try to compromise rather than try to be perfect and get every week the flour from north of Maine. It's fine if we get it sometimes from Arkansas, I don't know where it's produced.
It's the middle of nowhere.
Exactly. And sometimes from Maine. Like, let's mix things up. The fact that we have a car is certainly not environmentally friendly, but we all use a car, and it's fine. The fact is not to abuse of the car. I mean, if sometimes we can, I don't know, travel by bicycle. I'm a traveler, theoretically, pre-pandemic at least. So I was trying to take the plane as least as possible, for example. So it would have been amazing to just take the cheapest plane and every week jump from one side of the ocean to the other. But I never did that. I always picked a location and stayed there for 2-3 months, and then took a plane further. So I think the best thing is find that middle way, that sweet spot that makes us comfortable in the change. Because changes are always very difficult to make, but they are very positive. So if we find that place where we can be comfortable in the change, I think that's the secret.
I mean, I don't think any of us are advocating for returning to, pre-technological times.
Yeah, and I appreciate that.
I think what we realize is that both sort of philosophies need to intertwine and sort of live harmoniously together. And just really be aware when the advent of new technology happens, to be conscious of how that might be impacting our entire planet, our relationships, our economies. Like, you know, it's because we're so global now that a change on one side of the planet can reverberate and make a change on the other side of the planet.
I think I really liked Zach's point about like awareness, because I think it's so easy for so many people to get caught up in like the more like a global, or the linear economy, where it's like you are consuming what's being marketed to you and you're not you know, paying as much attention as you should for things, for like what you're putting in your body, and like making sure you're eating healthy and stuff like that. So while like, I don't know, that the, you know, it's the globe, I don't think, you know, the whole global thing is good, and I think there's a, like, also the whole information part of it is good, because you can learn a lot about these things, like through all that like the internet and all those connections. It's like a huge source of information for a lot of people. I've learned a lot of great things on that, but just to remember to like take a step back and slow down and be conscious about what you're putting in your body, and to be mindful and to make connections in your community. And I think it's like it's all there, and it's all good and all important.
And just to go off of what you had said too about like being extreme on one end or the other, I experienced that personally myself when I dove into the whole like package free thing. I think I had dove into this informational thing on the websites and on the internet, and I was like, oh my goodness, I can't buy anything in a package anymore. So I remember like 2 or 3 nights in a row when I was living alone, I just didn't eat almost anything because I couldn't go into the grocery store without getting overwhelmed and saying, oh my goodness, everything that is quick and easy is in a package. I can't do this. And so I would wander around in the store for half an hour, and then I would go home and say, okay, I'm not eating, I'm going to bed, which is a little extreme. So like that's the, you know, meeting in the middle, until I had a few people in my support group say, okay, maybe that's not exactly how extreme you need to be, but where can you meet yourself in the middle? And so it's finding those, you know, I know that not everybody's going to make themselves hungry for 2 nights in a row before they realize that they have to meet themselves in the middle. So like you were saying too, taking those little steps at a time where we can, and maybe saying, okay, tonight I'm going to buy a box of pasta because I want to and because I need to eat something, it's okay.
So what are a lot of the things that you do to stop packaging?
To stop packaging?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Well, so what had happened to me then was, you know, going back to bulk, I like to take a step back once a week or whatever and look at what I can buy in bulk. And where I had gone wrong is I didn't plan for that, and so I ended up with no food, and I needed something. And so I was like, okay, how can I be sustainable in a big food chain grocery store and hold on to my values? And what the, I guess the alternative would be is to buy maybe like a big box of pasta instead of a small box and things like that. So that's
Like
kind
I
of
put on
where that,
some of your deodorant that you made.
yeah.
It's working good.
I noticed you weren't smelling so bad.
Yeah,
But,
also
yeah.
making your own things.
And also it's cheaper. Like
Yeah.
people think that sometimes this kind of lifestyle is more expensive, and it's like we're actually trying to save money. And by buying those bulk things and then making your own toothpaste and making your own deodorant and making your own dishwasher detergent and making your own pretty much all the self-care products.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to like conscious-based decisions, where it's just important to be as educated as you can about what you're interested in reducing your impact on. And then I think with that education, which is a global thing now, because I learn a lot from the internet more than anything, I think. You kind of can then recognize that it is idealistic and is idealistic to be package free completely,
Right.
or to only buy local all the time. And with that education comes a level of conscious buying and conscious decision making that then hopefully steers you in the direction of seeking out more options like that, but then also giving yourself grace when that's not the reality of the situation.
Well, and something that I even started out doing was just reading the box of or the back of the boxes and
Yeah.
looking at the labels, and whether we're talking about clothes or food, we can see where it came from. And then if you just stop for a second and say, okay, this was made in China, what were the steps it took to get it to me today? And to just take that few minutes to think about that, then you can actually, you become more conscious and aware of the fact that there were a lot of emissions and
Right.
transportations that had to happen, and then you get into, you know, how it was produced, if it was produced ethically, and that's where that comes.
It's just been within the past 5 years for me where I looked at the back of the label and thought, oh, if I can't read that ingredient, I probably shouldn't be putting it in my body. So, and that's pretty, you know, that's only within the 5 years for me, you know. So that's a long period of your life that you go eating garbage, basically.
When I go to the
So
store,
I got a long way to go.
I like to be able to see what it is, like see how something was picked off the plant, like a banana or like an almond. I'm like, okay, I can see this whole food. I like this.
Yeah. You know, bananas now come opened in
Yeah.
plastic. Yeah.
You can buy them like that?
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of oranges like that too.
Yeah.
Like it had a perfectly good packaging.
The other thing too,
It comes naturally packaged.
with climate change, unfortunately, the little steps aren't enough. We've been given a 12-year time frame before we may not be able to reverse it. So that adds a whole different level of emergent feeling that we can't just take teeny little steps like we could before. So we do try to do, there is a organization called Drawdown. There's also a book that gives you the 100 most impactful things. That's why we knew refrigeration was number one, the largest effect. Air travel is down to number 30 something. What some of the top ones are eating a plant-based diet is way up at the top, and eliminating food waste. So that's what we're also doing here, is we're eating plant-based the majority of the time. We do have chickens that we have that we get eggs from, but we compost all of our waste, so our garbage doesn't smell. We don't use plastic garbage bags, we just have a garbage can, and that can sit all week because it doesn't have rotting flesh or rotting vegetable waste in it, because all that either gets fed to the chickens or goes in our compost. So it can sit all week and then it doesn't even smell. And that's why we don't need the garbage bags, because it's not all that yucky juice, you know, all over the
I
place.
think clothing too is a really big pollutant in the environment, and so always get
So we're
secondhand.
striving to go naked.
Yeah. Go naked and buy recycled clothes. But also too, I'm excited that we have a friend who is now like just got a screen printer, so we can create really awesome of our own clothing.
And she's using used shirts to put the screen print on,
Yeah.
buying from secondhand stores. So she's not buying new.
I must say that in my case, I've never been a very fashionable girl, honestly. But, you know, when I was...
This sweater is so nice.
When I was like 16, 17, the fast fashion exploded in Italy, right? And so I remember I used to go with my sister to these H&M new fancy shops, you know, and Bershka we have in Europe, and Pull & Bear and stuff like that. And we would just buy clothes, obviously. I mean, we were not overhauling, but we were buying a lot of clothes because they were so much cheaper than what we were used to. And so I've had my fair share of fast fashion buying in my life for a few years. And then during my 20s, at some point, I started reading about fast fashion. And I raised awareness on myself. I don't know if That's correct English.
Became aware.
I became aware of the whole problem of fast fashion, which is both environmental but also humanitarian, as we know from the Third World. But from that point, basically, I kind of stopped buying clothes, honestly. So it wasn't, I didn't force myself one day to say, okay, from now on, this is terrible. Now I'm never gonna buy clothes anymore. It just happened within 1 or 2 years, very naturally. I started buying less and less because I wasn't feeling, like subconsciously, I wasn't feeling well buying clothes. And then at a certain point, I just stopped. And I think at 25, I was living in Rome at that point, and therefore I had thrift shops available, whereas in the countryside we don't really have thrift shops. So I had a few years where I was buying like maybe 3 pieces of clothing a year from the used shop, and then I just stopped. And for a few years, honestly I didn't buy anything because I didn't need to. And I went from, I mean, you guys now see me all like this because in the countryside I don't feel like I should dress up for anything. I just want to be comfortable. And actually my subscribers in New York too, because I had no clothes for the summer because I came here in February. But usually when I'm back in Italy in normal conditions, I dress in a, not super stylish, but I have my style, you know. I like to dress up from time to time. And I can just tell you that you don't need to buy clothes. Like all the clothes that we already have in our wardrobe are good enough for us to create combinations and to be presentable. And if you need something else, for example, now I had to, because of the pandemic, because I was stuck here and all my clothes are by my family in Italy, I had to go and buy new clothes for the winter, warm clothes. So, you know, I'm wearing a pair of jeans now, $10 at the thrift shop in New York. This amazing Icelandic sweater I found in the same thrift shop for $15. You know, and all I'm wearing right now is all new for the first time in a few years. I have new clothes, but they are all used in the end. So we're just making the clothes circulating. We're not producing extra.
And they made them better back then too. They're stronger material.
Yeah.
And fast fashion.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was in a similar situation as Mary Jane this winter. I went to Romania in January and was supposed to leave in April and got stuck there for the pandemic, and ended up staying there until late June, almost July. And I had, I think, 4 pairs of pants with me and maybe a week of shirts, and I still am wearing those same clothes right now. Like, I haven't gotten any more clothes. That's all I've been wearing for the past 10 months now.
You've never removed your body.
You don't need to have a different shirt for every day of the month, or you know, a different pair of pants for.
I didn't even notice either.
Yeah, that's.
Mix them
I
out.
don't even notice anymore because I don't pay attention now. It's like not even a thought. in
I
my
used to
mind.
feel like I had to wash my clothes all the time. Like, I guess society just tells you that, but now, like, I wear my pants for like a whole week before I wash them.
Of
you know?
course.
You only have to wash them when you smell bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My shirts smell bad after a couple days, so.
Hopefully the deodorant.
Yeah. But I've also kind of learned in my journey, I guess, of trying to buy all secondhand and not contribute to that. Like, the smaller options I have, like, the easier my life is, and the less I think about having so many options and having to choose, like, what I'm wearing or, like, what I'm putting on myself, or even what I'm eating. Like, I've thought a lot about eating in season, talking to Mary Jane about that, and how that even kind of reduces the thought of, like, having to buy a whole bunch of groceries and, like, make a whole bunch of different meals, where you could also just be going with what would naturally be growing in your season and not have to think about all the different options and be overwhelmed by everything.
As far as eating what's in season, I remember Kathy, you made a comment about this earlier this summer, was that you get all your nutritional needs from whatever is growing in season. And a lot of people think they need this huge, diverse palette of foods coming into their house and, you know, things that might not be growing right now. Chances are there's going to be something with the same nutritional content that is growing right now and did not have to be picked either before it was ripe or, you know, have a load of preservatives or, you know, what have you added to it. And yeah, I think it's sort of, basically it's refining kind of what people have been told a healthy diet is, which is to eat a lot of colorful foods, which is true, but it's also eat a lot of colorful foods that are in season. And that way you get your nutrition and you don't impact the environment as much.
That's where the marketing comes in, because they've convinced people they need meat and they need certain things to be healthy. You have to have milk. You know, when you have a child or an older person, they get told for strong bones you have to have milk and you have to have yogurt, and it's just not a fact. You can get, if you take a pound of steak and a pound of kale, you have more protein in a pound of kale than you do in a pound of steak. People don't know that. And so you don't need to get, yes, you can eat beans for protein, but if you don't have the beans, you can eat greens for protein. All kinds of other things can give you what you need, but because of marketing, we've been told you have to have calcium from milk. It's the only place you can get it from. Well, there's calcium in a lot of foods. And if you ate potatoes, and I mean, you know, you need some bulk. If you just ate kale, you'd be starving. You need a variety of things.
Green.
Yeah. But people were told potatoes, don't eat potatoes, you'll get fat. Well, if you eat potatoes and vegetables, you don't get fat. You get fat when you eat the ramen noodles and the crackers in the box.
And the salted like potato, like fries.
Yes.
That's what, yeah.
Yeah.
I like both your points kind of together. I love your point, Emily, about having too many options, and like your point about marketing, because they just like overload you with all this stuff, and it like just frazzles people and makes it so difficult. Whereas, you know, kind of what Kathy was saying with the whole climate change things, like there are going to be, you know, sources that we're going to be cut off from, and our options are going to become limited. And I think that'll open a lot of eyes, and it's like, okay, here's what we have to work with. Like, how are we going to make this work, like, all together, and how are we going to like share it within our community and combine our skills to do all of these things. I was like, we're going to grow the food, and Sonny's going to make the clothes, and those are going to be our options.
Yeah. I think also too, something that people should watch out for is like when you're trying to learn all of this stuff, it's really important to find somebody that is more knowledgeable about it, because the internet is full of false things as well. Like the marketing is huge, so a lot of this information is extremely controversial, and when you Google something, you're gonna see the answers that people with the money want you to see.
That's right.
I even remember
It's
when
probably not going to come from an article on the internet.
Yeah.
I remember when kind of the zero waste movement was becoming a fad, and all of these companies were coming out with like, buy a whole new set of bamboo utensils and a whole new set of like specifically made bags and all these things to become sustainable.
Yeah.
When like the whole message of what they're trying to sell is go into your drawer and take a fork and a spoon and a knife and put it in like a bandana, and that's your thing that you're buying for $40 to be shipped from where, like, God knows where to you. And like,
well, we were just saying the other day, like all the plastic containers that are reusable, it's like you can take an old yogurt canister or something that you already bought from the store and keep using that over and over until it breaks, you know?
And then it's a fun surprise, like, guess what's in the yogurt container?
No, I really like that, like, principle you brought up, like, not trying to change what we already have, but like becoming creative with what we have. Like, taking like problems that are in the world and like spinning them so it's just not as big of an issue.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of backlash against meat, and I think a lot of that is slightly misguided. Like this whole weird area where it's like we ended up monocropping corn, and that corn, like 80% of it's going to feed these animals and feedlots. It's like this use of the farm, I think, is fundamental to climate change, and I think agricultural practices are more impactful than anything. And so it's trying to find a way to communicate with these farmers, like, don't grow that one giant 1,000-acre field block of corn and then ship it 3 states away to this 1,000-acre block of cattle. Like, take that whole space and like grow the corn for, or not even corn, because cattle don't even want to eat corn really, but it's like taking the land and like growing what the cows would eat, and then like having that at the same place and like rotating these animals around. And it's gonna be more impactful than anything we do. You think like solar cars are gonna be a thing, solar panels, whatever. It's like we could survive off of literally drilling oil for the rest of our foreseeable future till it runs out. Peak oil is a thing, but it's like the emissions of the refrigeration, I don't even think that's gonna be as big of a deal if we can capture the carbon in the soil from having regenerative agricultural practices. Like, meat's a very efficient protein. Kale is not. Like, it takes your body more effort to break down that 10 times more protein, and you end up like getting a little bit less of it, honestly, I think is how the biochemistry works. But I don't want to tell people not to not eat meat, because there are plants that have whole dietal nutrition. Potatoes. You could literally eat potatoes and survive.
Yeah. I think
But
it's a lot of it is like the amount of meat that people eat
Yeah.
is the problem. Like if you,
And-
like we were talking about proportions the other day. It's
Oh
like
my gosh,
most
yeah.
of your plate should be vegetables and then a little meat and a little grain. And it's like for most people it's like a steak, and I think that's where the issue is.
I have a question. I've heard you and Kathy mention the refrigeration thing, and I would love for you to tell me more about that, because I feel like I'm in the dark about.
Well, they've taken, originally people thought, oh, airplanes and cars, that's the biggest problem.
Right.
And this is a good thing about globalization. Globally, scientists got together and decided to study it and find out if it was true or not.
Mm-hmm.
And that was how they came up with this list of 100 things that we can do to draw down the carbon in the atmosphere, and that's why it's called drawdown.
Okay.
And what they found was refrigeration, and the refrigerant that's in, like, I'll use an air
Freon.
conditioner as an example. The
Okay.
chemicals they use to make the cold refrigerated air is what the problem is.
Okay.
And
okay.
because it is global and releases into the atmosphere, that became the number one thing. Things that you wouldn't think of, for example, educating girls was another top one because of population growth.
Yeah, yeah.
So you would never think that educating girls would be on a list of things to draw down
Right.
carbon in the atmosphere, but it's like number
That's so
5 or
fascinating.
6, somewhere up there near the top.
Yeah.
And these other things are further down. I mean, who would think that food waste would be up in the top 10?
Right.
But it is.
Mm.
I mean, we're talking, we're not just talking our plate. We're talking industries
Right.
that need to have the perfect tomato or the perfect carrot, so they throw out all the ones that aren't perfect.
Mm.
That's the kind of food waste that they're really talking about,
Okay.
that has a big, and then it, they factor in everything the energy caused to grow those plants, and then what's released when they disintegrate, in the landfill, then, they're not talking about what's in a true composting system, because it captures the carbon in that.
Yeah.
Well, I like just listening to both sides of that too. It's really comes back to that non-extremist way of looking at things.
Yeah.
It's like it can't just be one way or this way. And that's it's a perfect example of going back to the community setting of everybody taking advantage of what they know is the part that they understand about all of these different issues, and tackling it in that way. And meeting in the middle and saying, okay, where is our middle line? Where are we able to make a difference here?
And I feel like when there is no strive for a middle line, that's when kind of superiority, I'm trying to think of another word, but
My way's the only way.
either my way is the only way, and kind of
Like looking
a
down on other
condescension,
people,
a condescension that people can have, which makes everything feel so unattainable and so like a barrier between, I've been doing everything wrong my entire life, like I feel like a terrible person, and so it's interesting to find.
Some of it also comes back to, what Zach was saying earlier, just about, you can't always afford to get the most sustainably sourced whatever. It's basically, as long as you can do whatever is in your means and just take that one step in that direction, that's, something to be proud of, and something that I think just everyone as a whole would benefit from. Just if everyone makes one small step at a time, it makes a big change to society.
Yeah.
I think the base, as a philosopher, of course, I always try to think what are the very basic principles of this phenomenon. And if I think about what is the basic principle of being environmentally friendly, let's say, to me is really awareness. Because I think in the end, if a person is truly aware of what's going on in the world, he doesn't even need to make a big effort in order to, take action. Because that awareness, it's like I was telling about my story on the clothes. I didn't
Right.
force myself to stop
Yeah.
buying clothes. It was just
It happens naturally once you get that mindset.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's once you get the knowledge, you are aware about the problem, everything is going to kind of fix itself naturally.
And it looks different for everybody too. And I think that's what's so cool. It's like you said, you noticed it in the clothing, and I know for me that I started with realizing I can't starve myself to eat things, right? And I think it looks so differently for everybody, but
Yeah.
just knowing that it only takes that one thing to realize, oh wait, this doesn't feel right in my body anymore. I'm going to focus on how to not do this ever again, or how to do something differently, and then from there I think things just stem out.
Yeah, and I think it's important not to be too judgmental, say, on someone who may not be, at the same level you are, on the same page you are.
Yeah.
It's important to just educate on what you believe and what you know, and then, just let it go at its own pace from there.
And everyone's starting from a different place too,
Right.
like we're pretty, as Kathy had mentioned, we're pretty lucky to be able to do what we're doing on this level. Depending on what culture someone is from or what part of the world they're from, they might have not even heard the term like global warming or environmentally friendly, it's and that's not their fault. It's just something that needs to be a continued topic of discussion.
And can I say that this is another thing that I really appreciate about this community that you're building here, that you truly have no judgment towards anyone who has a different level of knowledge, of awareness than you. Like you really accept everything and everyone, and you're just willing to share your knowledge without judging first. And that's something that I really appreciate. And by the way, I take just 1 second if someone just connected right now, because I see some people in the chat don't understand what's going on, because my live streams are usually not like this, obviously. So I'm in New Hampshire during my trip in New England, and I've been living in this place for 1 week now, and I decided today to go live during one of our discussions about the topic regarding sustainability. And by the way, usually, because somebody was also joking about the fact they are going to play poker now, or they are a cult, somebody. So we just said in this very organized way because of the live stream. Usually this is much more spontaneous and natural, like these discussions just happen. I mean, some people are on the couch, some people are laying on the floor, whatever. So this is just because of the live stream, and that's it. Okay, so now I'm here. We are just discussing a little bit, and I'm sorry because I'm not looking at the chat too much. But if sometimes I go and if I see a very clever question, well formulated, I'm gonna read it. But so far, it was a lot of kind of political discussion going on. They were talking about, also I wanted to report to you what they were talking about. I think capitalism was one of the main topics of the discussion in the live chat, and another comment that captured my attention was somebody was mentioning a scientific research that proved that there are little organisms that can eat plastic.
Yeah.
So kind of.
Yeah.
And that's interesting because my first reaction to that would be, okay, that could be a temporary solution, but plastic is still a non-renewable
Right.
source.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
I
Used
mean,
petroleum or fossil fuels.
exactly.
Oh,
And the thing that, a recent story that I heard that always makes me question when there's a new answer
Savior, yeah.
is, we have a company that makes sporting clothing called Patagonia. And they're very environmentally conscious. So they figured out a way to make these beautiful fleeces with plastic bottles. And they were so excited that they could make all these products and use up old plastic bottles. But now we have the problem of microplastics.
Right.
So these clothing that you're washing in the washing machine, all the plastic is coming and going into the water and going into the soil. So what sounded like a really great idea, like eating, bacteria or plastic eating bacteria, may not be as simple as it sounds. And there's probably a lot more going on.
Yeah. And then like plastic eating microorganisms, you have to deal with propagating that microorganism and then figuring out how to distribute that microorganism while still keeping it alive. And then like there's this whole infrastructure. Like it sounds like definitely something useful and worthwhile to look into, but it's new.
Well,
And anything new takes time to learn how to use most effectively.
also, to add on to what Kathy was saying, the used plastic was making to go to the first step, like plastic packaging or whatever, that was used to package food or goods or whatever, that created trash. Then someone said cleverly, like, hey, let's make some clothing out of this. Well, now that's creating waste too because of the microplastics. And then, now it's being, I guess, discovered, or, people are researching this organism that can eat plastic. Well, what's going to happen when those organisms decompose? And, is that going to be some type of matter that can just go back into the earth? How are they synthesizing the plastic that they're eating? Are they separating components of it? Or,
Can it throw off our whole ecosystem?
yeah.
Well, and that's where it comes back down to looking at how we consume things and how are we being consumers. Because yes, that helps dampen the problem, or maybe like put a Band-Aid on it per se. Same with, recycling too. Well, but we're still producing new plastic, and we're still using these water bottles and this food packaging and whatever it is. So it's about how do we shift our habits in our consumerism away from the need for these packages as
So
a
is-
whole.
Is there ever a time that being a throwaway society is gonna be a good thing? Cause that's what plastic is, it's a
It's
part
going
of
back
the
to
throw
you
away.
have to get the root
Yeah,
of the problem.
I
and the
think
root.
I think the
Right.
root of the
Plastic.
problem is we have too many people. And
That's what they were saying in the chat.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this
Yeah.
for 1 second.
and
There are
so
too many people on the planet.
Yeah, we gotta go
That's a
somewhere
huge
else.
topic.
yeah,
We're almost there.
and you know,
Sorry.
there's no simple answer to that. It's like, oh yeah, let's just kill 10 billion people. It's like, no, that doesn't work at all. But then
Mother
it's
Earth
like,
is doing that, Zach.
Yeah.
That's what this pandemic is.
yeah, and that's only a
Yeah.
symptom of climate change.
Right.
I had made this comment to Mary Jane a couple days ago, but when people say like, "Oh, the Earth is in danger, save the Earth," it's not the Earth that we need to save; it's ourselves that we need to save.
Yeah.
She will kick us
like
off.
the human
yeah,
race.
no, she'll be fine.
Yeah.
But we will not.
And that's what it comes, I was just gonna say, that's what it comes down to, is being aware of that.
And I think even with like the current population level, like the techniques to just keep us alive. Like, say we move away from consumerism and we institute the most utopian governmental policies that somehow magically work out perfectly. The technology to support the life of the human collective is ultimately detrimental. Like, there's no way around it. And it's like, you can try to go as organic, less soil disturbance, like, we're eating rutabagas and potatoes, and, you know, it's like, even that, like, just the physics of trying to get that much food out of the ground and to the people is detrimental to the earth,
Yes.
current ecosystem.
I think legislation is really important to help those places that are overpopulated to help people, you know, because I feel like a lot of what we see in different countries that are overpopulated or there is way too many people in certain areas. I think it comes down to places that are being underserved or they're being exploited by capitalism system, but developed nations, you know what I mean? Like developed nations throughout the world, they go to these places where people don't have access to education, for example, you know. So definitely, I think a way to solve that is also, you know, to have the power to elect more new leaders that can have better legislation that allows for like, okay, let's focus really truly in the human, you know, like and educate them and give them the ability to have art or to have time off, you know, to do other things, you know. Because I feel like the more we are like just focused on surviving, you know, like in a lot of countries, you know, like Nicaragua, for example, like there is a lot of people who are just, they just need food, you know, like they die, and so they're just always in that hustle of trying to survive. So it's hard for them to have some time to like, well, I want to read now, or I want to make music or do these other things, you know, that can, you know, help a little bit. And I feel like a lot of what we see right now, all these, it has to do directly with privileged people of the world, you know, who have these governments, who have these countries who, you know, go to all these regions and exploit them and take advantage of them. So I feel like that's the result of that, you know, like bad governments, you know. And a way to go back or to regenerate, you know, I think will be through changing those things. Obviously that's, you know, like that's hard and like it's almost like utopia to think about it, but I feel like I have a lot of hope to see new, especially in the last year. I think I've seen so many politicians who in some ways start changing or, you know, they're acting differently, and I see a lot of people, you know, uprising, you know, for those changes. So I feel like there is hope in that, you know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Please.
Well, just what I wanted to tag on to what he was saying is just that the vast majority of overusing, polluting is done by first world countries. It's the the people who are privileged are the ones, the main ones that need to sort of understand what their privilege costs for other people around the world and just for the planet.
And you were saying the other day, so I was shooting an interview with several members of the community, and Colin was one of them, and I was editing the video today. That's why I remember what you said in the interview, which you're going to see next week, by the way, on the channel. You were saying at a certain point, we were talking about the millennials and how they are going to, we millennials are going to probably right? Probably create
Whatever, Boomer. Oh, it's
Sorry.
okay, Boomer. That's
I didn't mean to exclude people.
Go ahead, sorry.
So you were saying how there is that part of hope that our generation is creating some change, both because we are more aware of these problems, or we are aware in comparison to our parents, which for the most part they weren't, and also because we cannot afford, a
Privilege.
more privileged kind of lifestyle.
It's, our lifestyles and awareness are almost being born out of necessity.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah,
not-
exactly.
I wouldn't say it's, quite there yet, but with future generations, I wouldn't be surprised if it really is just like, well, this is the only way people can afford to live is closer to the earth than, locally.
What I wanted to say was that before leaving for this trip, my husband actually was showing me a Netflix documentary. I think it's on Netflix. The life of David Attenborough. I don't know if you watched it.
Yeah.
And I didn't watch the entire thing, only parts, but from what I've watched, please, The Life of David Attenborough, go watch that movie because the part that I've seen was excellent. And he said something that hit my attention because it was kind of new for me. And he was talking about the overpopulation, and for him, the natural solution to that is education, in the sense that he was suggesting that we are kind of reaching the peak of the population, the global population, because right now we are in that moment in the middle between, capitalism and overgrowth of the human species simply, from the third world countries especially, together with that kind of global education. How do you call it? Like universal education, I guess it's the right term. Universal education, which creates less new lives. Because if you think about our countries, at least I take mine, Italy, we are a very old country, but we don't create new lives. Like women nowadays don't make a lot of kids, which compensate the fact that older people live longer. So they create this abundance of numbers of people simply. So he was saying the more we are going to expand this model of universal education to third world countries, the longer we are all going to live, which is inevitable because the scientific discoveries are going to reach the third world war anyways. But also at the same time, women are going to make less kids. So instead of 4 or 5 kids for every woman in the third world countries, there's going to be 1 or 2. So that was an idea that I never thought about for some reason, and it could actually work. It could create a good balance. I don't know. What do you think?
As far as in
Are you familiar?
first world nations goes, I could see population decline resulting from affordability, kind of tying back to what we said before. It's like, I don't have kids, thank God. Right now, or maybe later, I don't know. But just even the thought of having one kid to me right now, I'm just like, how on earth would I ever afford to raise a kid? And then, you know, only having one kid, that declines the population because it takes 2 people to make 1 person. So that's a smaller number right there. It takes 2 kids to sustain the population and 3 kids to grow. It's like, I'm never gonna be able to afford 3 kids. Like, you know, I don't know how many other people are, you know, in that same situation, but I would expect that, you know, if people really thought about it, they're like, yeah, there's no way I'm having 3 kids.
I have heard a lot of
What's
people.
what do you mean by afford?
Oh, kids aren't cheap. I mean,
Well,
it's another
but
human that you have to.
That doesn't make sense for third world countries having more kids though.
Oh, I was tying that back to what we had talked about with like affordability in first world countries and privilege. Yeah.
Well, the reason people had lots of children and still do in third world countries is that they work. The children work,
Right.
and they also, children die.
And maybe
So
the
there's a lot of
education,
families,
too.
they might have 6, 7, 8 children, and several of them don't live past 2 years old, and they need help on their farm. So they just keep having children.
So, so on that, like you were saying, I think
Work-a-ways
that
better.
has to do a lot with the educational piece, for women bearing children and on that end of things. And I just wanted to add on my end, and kind of tying back into what you were talking about with sustaining life, the machinery and the equipment that is required to sustain life on the other end of things as well. I think, you know, going back to quality versus quantity of life. And I don't want to get into it too much, but just from the background of seeing or taking care of an older population in my past, I've seen that sometimes we, at least in this country and then in this area of the world, we sometimes, for our own reasons, try to keep people alive who are either not experiencing any quality anymore, which in then turn we're using machinery to keep them alive in that sense, or who just don't want to be here anymore, who have lived to their extent, which, you know, in a way it sounds kind of gruesome, but I think in other countries, maybe in other cultures and other times of civilizations, we wouldn't have tried to extend life just to extend life. And that's where we're needing to find the balance again of maybe not having as many children because we're trying to compensate the fact that we're extending life on the other end.
An indigenous person was asked what he would do in this pandemic situation, and he said that he would help those to die well. Because I don't believe that death is a bad thing. I think it's totally fine. We're all gonna die, you know? And I also believe in reincarnation and that you get another chance if you want to, you know? And, but yeah, everybody's so afraid of death, and I think that's a really big issue as well.
I'm so happy that you brought up this point, and you have an extra reason for that, because Stormy has worked for a couple of years, I think.
I worked for 5 years with elder care is what we would call it here.
Yeah, exactly. And you shared the exact thought that I have, the fact that we arrive to a point that we extend life a little bit too further. Like there is no need, even my grandparents, honestly, you know, in the last few years of their lives, some of them at least, they didn't really have a reason to live anymore. And it was just probably our attachment to, not even attachment to life, it was more our fear of death that kept them from going. Because nowadays we have the technology to kind of defeat death for a few years more.
Sorry, keep going.
No, I'm done.
I was just gonna say, I think a large part of at least like the United States Western culture that contributes to this fear of death is just the lack of community living, where we're not exposed to what aging actually looks like, and then it perpetuates this like need to have anti-wrinkle everything and need to stay as young as you can as long as possible, because it's hard to actually be exposed to what an aging process in a healthy and for lack of a better, like respectable kind of way. It's not quite the right word, but can look like firsthand. And so then when a grandparent or someone older does kind of come to that stage where they're nearing the end of their life, we don't understand like how to take care of them in the way that we would, I feel, if we spent more time living with them and building a community like this with them.
Well, that's a really good tie-in, I think, too, because I think going back to that individualistic way of this societal norm that we've entered in, we're so used to just being alone.
Yeah.
So in that, we have time for self-judgment and, you know, thinking we have to be a certain way. But when we're in a community setting and there is somebody who is getting older or nearing their end of life, we can talk to them about what they want,
right,
versus saying, okay, this is society's expectation of what's real. And when you're no longer in that, you're over here, and this is what happens when you're over there. And so having that supportive community loving you anyway, when you're in whatever stage of life, I think is just so important. And you can't do that on your own, because that's when your own self-judgments come in.
Exactly.
On the other hand, many people have never cared for a child or even held an infant when they become parents, which tells a lot about our society. How can you be 25 or 30 and never have held an infant or changed a diaper? It just, you know, that just shows how separate we are.
And I think ageism is one of the biggest problems for modern, like the separating so specifically of age groups, and like the need to like, no, go to college so you can make all the friends your age and then have those friends for the rest of your life. And like only like I think cross-generational relationships are almost kind of seen as a bad thing and talked down upon, when I think they're the most valuable part of life and connecting with other people, because how would you know what it's like to hold an infant, or know what it's like to have conversations with people like 70 and older about their stage of life that you haven't experienced yet, and get that wisdom from somebody that you couldn't with someone your age.
Gives a lot of opportunity for being the student and also being the teacher. You know, being a student for people who are younger or are older than you, and being humble and learning, you know, what that person is presenting to you, and then also relaying whatever information that you've gained through your experiences or your studies or knowledge that you've had in your life, and giving it to someone else, knowing that, oh, when I'm the student, you know, I really, you know, this person just told me something that I had no idea about that revelated my life, or just was able to relate to me in some certain way, and it makes you into a more humble teacher. You know, for me anyways, when I feel like I'm imparting information to people, I'm like, oh, I remember when I learned that. I had no idea what they were talking about.
I think there is this trend, I think, of sanitizing the things in our society that we don't like, or that we have some sort of like natural dislike for, and therefore we decide to get rid of, you know, like death, or like being separate from certain things, you know. So we sanitize things to the point that we stop believing they're natural, you know, like death, like being next to people who are dying or that they're dead, you know, like actually we were talking about this the other day, that you know, like in some countries and some places, when somebody dies, you know, they have like showing corpses inside their houses, you know, where people and neighbors and can come and see the corpse, you know. And there are developed nations where now there are services where we can just host that separate, and you know, so there is not an experience with that anymore. There's not an experience with all those things. So I think understanding that there is so many things that we may not like in everyday life, they're important. You know, they're part, they're core of life, of regular life, like being in a community, you know, like, or having wrinkles, or having gray hair, you know, like that's a very natural process. We may not like all the time, but that's nature.
We're taught not to like
I was, I may get this wrong, but I was told when I was over in Romania that I think it's every 7 years there's, you know, a significant amount of people who will
Oh my
Oh my
god.
God.
Hey, oh,
What happened?
You scared everybody.
Wow.
Sorry, guys. Everyone awake?
But what I was told, it was something like every 7 years that they will unbury their dead and leave them on, you know, open their sarcophagus or casket or whatever, you know, their tomb. And I can't remember how long they stay unburied for, but it's for people to go and look and observe them. And
where did you say this was? Romania?
yeah,
Whoa.
I don't know if it's a thing in Eastern Europe as
Yeah,
well,
that's
but
fascinating.
you know,
Is
it's
it a thing in
just
Italy?
cool.
Really? No.
And
I know that.
I don't know how many, you know, people in Romania do it, but you know, it might just.
I think Mexico has a Day of the Dead, you know, like Dia de los Muertos, and I think there's this lovely movie Coco.
Oh, that's such a great movie.
And I think that you know, it's nice to see that this whole culture they have so much inclusivity towards that, you know, which in other, in different moments throughout my life, I find like there are moments where people like they don't like that, like you cannot talk about them about that, you know.
True. And it makes I feel like viewing life so much more when you accept death and really talk about it. Then on the flip side, you're able to appreciate life more.
Exactly.
In philosophy, in the history of philosophy, we really say that death is exactly what gives sense to life, because it gives finity. Do you say finity in English? Finiteness, finity.
Finiteness.
Finiteness to life. If we were living an infinite life, nothing would have sense anymore. Like, if we could live for millions of years, let's say, what meaning would this conversation have?
Right.
What meaning would have wake up in the morning?
Right.
Nothing. So.
And also give the idea of that we were gonna die, so we better celebrate each other right now. Like let's live in love and in peace and harmony, and let's talk a lot about our feelings and the things that you know, like, because tomorrow we may not be there. You know, why?
Yeah. So instead of trying to avoid death, we're trying to embrace living. And I think that's a really great way of looking at it.
There you go. Yeah, that's a beautiful thing to put in. Yeah.
So what about our position on capitalism? Do we want to mention it or not? I mean, not that there is anything to mention, but people were asking about it.
What Kathy was saying about the linear economy and just things being, you know, resources and materials and labor being exploited and just, you know, basically throwing them away. It's not a very sustainable way to run an economy.
But I think what we talked about the other morning too, we had a beautiful conversation the other morning about that same thing, about how I lost my train of thought there, but we were talking a lot about how this economy has set us up to measure our worth for how much money we're making or how much productivity we're putting out into the society, and that's where we've disconnected.
Capitalism is getting out of control, is what I think. I think the basic idea of being able to be, to sell whatever it is you're selling and have an economy where it's balanced and the best product is the one that you strive for, because that's the one people are going to buy. So you want to have the best car. You want to have the car that everybody knows is going to last a long time, because then you're successful. But now that we have so much corruption in politics, and so many monopolies now that just take over entire markets, that the little grocery store can't make it anymore because of the big chains, and we used to have laws against monopoly, and those have gone away magically, which means somebody's paying off people in government. So capitalism now is not what capitalism was supposed to be when it first started. So you can't compare the two even close. It's so far, so deep, so black that you can't say capitalism now is what the definition of capitalism is.
Oh, I was going to say, like, you know, the idea, the premise behind capitalism is like the idea that somebody can make or get as much money as they want, you know, even though they don't need it, or they can size the means of production for themselves, you know, in this regard of human life, for example, you know. So I think that premise is, to me, is not compatible with the idea of like we're humans and we need to support each other, you know. Because, for example, for capitalism, like that's for a capitalist, like somebody who is in the top 1% of people who make money in the U.S., for them, the whole reason of what they're doing is to make more money. And for me, that's just like doesn't make sense because they don't need it anymore, you know. But their companies or their systems are in a way that they will keep making money. It doesn't matter what. So that would include, like, you know, going to different countries and exploit those countries and bring those products back to the United States. And if you think about the Native American, for example, or any indigenous people that they get to experience life differently than capitalism, they have a much different understanding. Like, there is a beautiful book, Braiding with Sweetgrass, that describe pretty much like the mindset of like, I'm just gonna take what I need right now. Like if I go fishing, I'm just gonna take 2 fishes because I only need one for me and one for my friend, you know. And I think that should be it, you know, like we should focus on not just finding ways and we can resolve the problems like, for example, pollution, but also how can we educate people so they don't feel like they need more that they already have, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just want to say 2 things. One, you just sort of sparked a comment that I want to add. Just the whole capitalist system is based on the premise that, you know, people are just going to keep buying and buying and buying and buying and buying, where it's, if we had a more wholesome environment, we wouldn't feel like we need to go buy more than we actually need. And then the other thing I want to say is, yes, there is a lot of corruption in the United States and, you know, just in, you know, capitalism in general. But that being said, there's also a lot of corruption in other forms of government. You know, as I've said, I came from Romania, and, you know, they were part of, you know, the USSR, communism and whatever, and, you know, that didn't work out well for them either. I think really what it comes down to is whatever form of government or economy that you have, there has to be like altruism and sort of like the integrity to not exploit anything or, you know, to be corrupt in any ways. You really need to basically be there to serve the people or whatever you're there to do, you need to do, and you're not there to be like finagled or manipulated by people who are just going to pay you money or, you know, doing a favor for your rich friend or this, you know, your government friend or whatever.
Well, I like the quote, the more that you have, the less that it means. And the less that you have, the more that it means. And
Wow.
like,
Never
what are
heard.
people looking for, you know? It's like to fill a void inside of them. And you're not going to find that through having more money and things.
Yeah, there it's also like he said, it's very important to like changing capitalism will solve other forms of oppression that are what we are. You know, like for example, misogyny. You know, like if we think that just you know, quitting capitalism and becoming socialism, there's going to be all kind of social oppression that we still have to deal with, and there is so many other kind of problems that our society needs to deal with, and like he said, like there is other countries that have tried other forms of systems, you know, and we should look at those examples as a way of saying like, we have to find not just quick capitalism, but also how can we experiment and keep always moving forward. It's not like, we're just changing out of capitalism and everything.
Yeah. So I think capitalism really arose out of the world slowly becoming more globalized. So like I think capitalism really started to become created around like the time when Europe was really starting to colonize the Americas pretty heavily, and like Adam Smith wrote the book The Wealth of Nations. And in the book, Adam Smith talks a lot about like taxes and means of production, and trying to balance like supporting your populace through means of production, because like you don't want all of your farmers to go out of business because the people in the next country over can produce all of that stuff that in just like importing it, and like trying to find that balance between like the trade. And it kind of got all corrupted because people want to like serve themselves, and a lot of people who have this disconnect from their own personal life and like have this void that they're trying to fill with more and more and more, it gets all convoluted and really messy. And so I think we're never going to be perfect, and it's kind of going to be like when you have a speaker and you turn up the music too loud, and then it starts to like crack and pop and stuff, and like, oh, this is too loud. And you go, okay, so like, I'll just take like an example. Like you got people like Jeff Bezos who have this crazy notion like that if I make enough money, I can help save humanity by building space colonies and funding research so people can live in space, and then we won't have the problem of like overpopulation on the planet. And it's like, yeah, cool. But it's like,
Does he?
yeah, oh, for
didn't
sure.
know that.
Elon Musk too. But at the same time, like in order to do that, like Elon Musk is getting these minerals from this country that the United States has become antagonistic with, and he is all for it. But at the same time, he's sitting there like, yeah, like we're gonna go to Mars, we're gonna save humanity by like building colonies on Mars.
He's exploiting people to get there.
Yeah, but he's exploiting people to get there, and it's just really messy because like people can hold these beliefs where they think they're doing it for the greater good of all from the bottom of their heart, while like turning a blind eye to the small farmers in this country that's half a world away where you're getting these rare earth minerals from. And it's just like crazy. Because it's like, you can't deny that guy when he's like, yeah, I want to like save humanity, and like those feelings he has are real.
Which is like brings up solar panels.
Yeah.
We think that if we just go to solar panels, we're gonna solve the problem, but really it's just use less electricity.
It's getting to the root
Yeah.
of the problem,
Yeah.
not like
Yeah.
masking stuff, you know,
Yeah.
not like trying to find a way to recycle plastic into shirts. It's like just don't use the plastic.
It's like,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know where.
Solved it! Less electricity! Okay, maybe
I was
that's
gonna say, why is the
Wait, did you do that?
yeah.
Oh. I thought it was a sign.
Oh,
I saw an outside light on us.
what is that outside light?
I think someone's
Is there
over.
a camper out there?
Yeah.
Should I go?
Yes.
Well, creepy light in the middle of the garden.
Turn on the porch light
Yeah.
maybe too.
I'm just noticing the theme of everything we've continued to talk about is like balance, right? I think that's ultimately what it comes back to in the end, whether we talk about governmental systems or we talk about sustainability and what we're trying to do, whatever it is. It's like where we've continued to go wrong is we've gone from one extreme to the next extreme to the next extreme. Capitalism isn't working, so we need to be communist, and communism isn't working, so we need to be capitalist again. So it's like, or whatever other forms, I'm not overly educated in that area, but like my point is that there is a fine line and there is a balance, and I think that's where we're realizing we have to come to, is that middle ground in order to move forward and to heal and to reconnect with the planet and to get our hands dirty in the dirt and recognize where our food comes from or where our clothes are being made or, you know, whatever it is. It's really about fine-tuning and balancing again.
Thanks.
And I think for a lot of folks that may be watching that they may want to get started somewhere, you know, I think for me the biggest thing that has kind of opened my eyes to it is the ability to travel, not as a tourist, but also going to communities or places where I can sit down with people, you know. And if, for example, people from Vermont in my last work away, they were saying exactly the same point, like, we don't want more wind towers, you know, like, because the government in Vermont is very progressive, but they put in a bunch of wind turbines on all the mountaintops, and the farmers and the people there is like, no, we don't want that. We just want people to consume less energy.
Yeah.
So the best way is to travel, to talk to your neighbor, to really experience it by yourself. You know? I think to go there and work with your farmer, and they will teach you.
Or watch it on YouTube.
Yeah.
And ask questions, right?
Yeah.
Ask your neighbor questions.
Yeah, I
Say,
think.
hey, what can I learn from you?
Yeah, I think experience in the world and firsthand, I think can give so much insight. But everything begins somewhere, and I think YouTube, like we were talking about, like those awesome websites and just people who write books, you know, Breathing with Sweetgrass, for example, awesome book. Everything begins there, and then the next step is just go out to their neighbors, how comment and talk to them and ask them questions and live in community.
I think I see a lot of confusion into these topics in general when I hear conversations or I read conversations on the internet, for example. Like people, even now, by just sometimes I was looking at the chat, and people just speak some details about the problem and say, what about that? What about that other thing? And then it's overwhelming. When you focus about specific details, it's just overwhelming. You feel like the problem is too big and you cannot do anything about it.
Yeah.
But in reality, at least I talk for myself. I'm a person who thinks a lot, observes a lot, and I always come to my own conclusions. And my own conclusions, a year ago, I came to was that I just followed that very basic and simple principle of the 3 R's. Reduce, reuse, and recycle.
Yes.
It's so simple. I think I started hearing about that when I was 10 or 13.
Yeah.
It's so old. Like when we began to talk about environmental problems, well, people began to talk about environmental problems way back. But still, it's so simple. So whenever you feel overwhelmed about environmental problems and you feel like you're not doing enough and stuff like that, just think in your daily life about these 3 things. And don't start from recycling, because that's the last thing. So many people are focused on recycling, but in reality, the thing is reduce first. Like,
turn off all your light switches immediately.
ask yourself, is this really necessary in my life? Do I really need to buy this thing? And 90% of the times the answer is gonna be no. So don't get that. And then reuse, like you were talking about, the plastic containers. Like I never buy plastic containers. You just reuse like the yogurt container or something like that. And just the last thing is recycling. I don't even focus about recycling that much, because the first 2 things are more important. But sorry, you weren't.
Well, and like I was going to say too, just to kind of, we say reduce and reuse, and recycle could even be looked at differently than what we've traditionally, or have been looking at it for the last 25 years. Instead of recycling into a recycling facility, how can we still reuse, but recycle it in a different way. So not just reusing, but recycling this.
Like old clothes into a blanket.
Right,
Yeah.
or old
Yeah.
clothes into new fashionable clothes because we're cutting them up like our friend Sonny does, or
All our glass bottles that we're gonna build out of.
building
houses.
cob houses out of, or reusing printed paper as scrap paper later, or whatever it is. So recycling it at home too, thinking about recycling at home. How can we recycle in a different way? So just
And also, last thing I wanted to add is that reducing, which is the main principle here, should not be seen as a sacrifice. It's not that you sacrifice yourself and your needs for the common good. It's really, like Nick was saying, how was that quote? That was so beautiful.
The more that you have, the less important it is. And the less you have, the more important it is.
So if you start reducing, you will start to realize that your life and the stuff that you have in your life will acquire value. You know, the less you have, the more value that they have. So it's not really about sacrificing. This is also a point that I really want to make. That's it. What do you think? Shall we
I think we are
finish this live stream?
Bye.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all, people. I hope you learned something today. I hope you felt inspired. I absolutely love all these people and all the conversation that we are having. And if any of you didn't appreciate the fact that I wasn't talking all the time in this live stream, I'm sorry, but I think this is as interesting or much more interesting than when I talk alone.
Thank you
So,
for listening.
yeah, thank you for listening, for who followed everything, and we'll see you in the future. Come to the Sacred Nectar. Oh, by the way, yeah, some people were seeing this in the framing.
Oh, yeah.
Sacred Nectar Sanctuary is the name of this place. It's not Latin. Somebody was saying that it's Latin. No, it's English. It's the name of the place, and you find them on Workaway if any one of you wants to come here to have an experience and learn things and feel good and enjoy the environment. You're welcome.
Or hip camp if you just want to camp.
Right. They have.
Or buy babies.
They won the award for best camping in New Hampshire this year, right?
On Hip Camp.
Hip camp is like Airbnb for camping, and there's a lot of really awesome places.
Okay, great. Okay, guys.
Thank you.